focus and everything. All right.
What about the chair there, Chad?
I think it's out of focus, out of frame. All right. The back of it is in there. I'll push it forward. Okay, Don. Keep this with your stuff.
Okay.
That, when your descendants find that 100 years from now,
Okay, we'll put that right with it.
they'll go down the library and get a peek at you.
Yeah, say
Imagine what that'd be like if you could go down the library now and find out what your great-great-grandfather did in the Civil War.
Wouldn't it be something?
Wouldn't that be
something?
Well, you told me your name and your date of birth.
It's like a deposition, isn't
It is. You swear to tell the truth? What I like to do is I like to get a timeline on this. I know people that probably be watching this and interested in this would kind of have a genealogical interest too. So, where were you born?
In fact, I was born in Sotaville.
You were? Okay. And what's the address there?
Where I was born?
Where are you born?
5940 Woodland Avenue.
Okay. Pretty nearby.
Yeah, it's right. In fact, my my son owns it. Tony and my daughter Sally, and then his children are living in it right now.
Okay.
So there's like my father lived in it, and then we lived in it.
Is that right?
Yeah. So we had 4 generations living in that house.
Well, now this address, though, we're up on the hill here. What is this address? 52.
This is 5276 Oakland Boulevard.
Oakland Boulevard. Okay. What was your father's name?
Paul. Paul.
Okay.
Paul Incher.
What was your mother's name?
Frances.
Okay. What was her maiden name?
Stedman. Stedman.
Are they from this area too?
Well, they were originally, they came in here from my grandfather, my mother's dad, came in from Missouri. They're originally from Missouri.
I see, okay.
And then their parents were originally from Alabama. In fact, some of our relation fought for the South, and some of our relation also fought for the North. So they had them on both sides. But my grandfather's name was, they always called him E.A., but his name was Alexander Elias Alexander Davis Stedman. So Davis was named
for Jeff Davis?
Jefferson Davis.
Oh, be darned.
And which he, when he came north, he dropped the Davis name.
Oh, he did. I wonder why. Well, now that would be your mother's father.
Yeah, and they came to, they finally located Oak Hill, and then they came down here in the early 1900s. And he was a contractor. In fact, quite a few of the houses in Sotaville he did build. And he had a big part in building the Methodist Church.
Where, in Sotaville?
In Sotaville,
okay.
Yes.
Where would that be located now?
Well, right now they've torn it down because they had some problems with it, and
they just recently tore that down, didn't they? That big red.
Right.
Oh, it was sad for me to see that go. I didn't know that they were having problems with it.
Yeah. In fact, we have pictures of the original church here.
Oh.
But it was built 1916.
Oh my. Okay. Now, what was your mother's name?
Her name was Shire.
Shire. Her first name?
You know, you got me. I forgot now what her name is, but because I never knew her. But
okay, you didn't know we'd have a test.
Well, her mother died when back in when my mother first graduated from high school back in 1919.
Would that be the influenza epidemic?
No, I don't know what she died of. Was it a heart attack or what, or cancer? I don't know. And then, of course, my grandfather married again, and of course, her name was Anna, who that's the one I remember. Jessie was her name.
Jessie is who?
My mother's name. Jessie Shire. S-C-H-I-R-E-R.
What was your father's parents' names?
Henry.
Okay.
And
Sherman.
Sophia.
What was her maiden name?
Schmidt.
Now, was she local also?
No. Well, she was local, but she, Her father came over. In fact, I just found this out. Came over from Alsace Lorraine, and their name was Schmidt. And then my grandfather came from Bavaria. My grandfather's father came from Bavaria, and his name, our original name was Sherman. Sherman.
Okay. Now, were you the Sherman farm that I knew on Dogwood Ridge? Was that your farm?
Well, there's several Shermans, but we were all related. Now, the Sherman farm that where Jack Blazer built a lot of apartments, that was originally part of the farm.
Okay. Now, who owned that? Brother or the?
No, my grandfather owned it. And then my dad inherited it, and then it was sold to was a builder, a fellow by the name of Warner, and then he sold part out to Jack Blazer, who built the apartments back there.
Now, what is your wife's name?
Faye.
Okay. And her maiden name?
Frazee. F-R-A-Z-E-E.
Do you know her parents' names?
Henry and Melissa.
Okay. What was Melissa's maiden name?
Logan.
Logan.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you have children.
Right.
How many children do you have?
With 5 children.
Okay, and their names are?
Tony, Tom, Sue, Sally, and Tim.
Okay.
And then we have an adopted granddaughter.
Okay.
Who's living with us now. Her name's Amber. She's 16.
Now, your children, you have 5 children, and I know Tony's in the business with you. Is that correct? That is correct. And where are the other children? Spread out?
Tom is an attorney in Columbus. He's right now more or less setting up the PERS in Columbus. He's one of the top people in it. And then I have Sue Ann. She's my oldest daughter. And of course, Sally's my youngest daughter, who's in the agency.
Oh, yes.
But Sue Ann has been with the Wildlife Division, Department of Natural Resources, and she's a fiscal officer.
Okay.
And then Tim's my youngest, and Tim is a contractor.
Okay. Let's talk about your military now a little bit. When did you go in the military?
I went in May of '44.
Do you remember the day? May?
I think it was May the 6th or May the 7th, something like that.
Now you went into the Navy.
In the Navy,
What were you doing then? Let's go back a few years before then. I'll ask you a common question. What were you doing when you heard Pearl Harbor had been attacked?
There's where Millhouse lived on Gallia Street. In fact, I think Patty Thompson lives there now. My grandfather owned a lot there, right back of Millhouse, and we always had a small outside basketball court there. So we were playing basketball. I can remember real, just like it was yesterday almost. And somebody came up, of course, by the time we heard of it, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so they just bombed Pearl Harbor. Well, everybody said, "Where's Pearl Harbor?" Nobody knew where Pearl Harbor was. And we found out it was in the Hawaiian Islands. There was a naval base and all that.
Well, what did you think about that, and what did the rest of you?
I think everybody was upset. Everybody. Of course, I was like 15 at the time, and I think everybody just couldn't wait till they were old enough so they could sign up and
Go beat the Japs?
go beat the Japs. Yeah, the Germans. And the Japanese was ones that we really had a strong dislike for because of the sneak attack.
Let me ask you something before we get into all that, though. I usually ask this before. Your occupation, what do you do?
I've been in the general insurance business since 1950.
1950, okay.
I started out really as a part-time insurance agent. There's Amber.
Hi. How you doing?
This is Mr. McHenry. This Amber.
We're making a movie here. Your grandpa's going to be famous. What did you do then when you got out of the service?
When I got out of the service, I went to the branch, High University, and at that time, it was their classes in 1946 when I started down there was in the high school. So we went to night school down to Portsmouth High School for the High University branch.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went there 2 years. Faye and I got married in '48. She was still a junior in high school, and so we decided rather for me to go on to college at that time that she wanted to finish high school, so she did.
Okay.
And now later on went to business college down to Leo Blackburn's PIBC.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did Leo own it at that time?
Leo owned it at that time.
I got him on tape.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Do you? He's one of my favorite people.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that is why I didn't, and I never did get back to going back to finish up to get my degree, which I'm not for sure what I would have wanted to do anyway, because by that time I was up to my neck in the insurance business.
What was it like getting married that early back then?
Well, I'm 5 years older than Faye, so probably it wasn't near as traumatic maybe for me at 22 as it was for her at 17. But, she seemed to...
Did she have her parents' blessing?
Oh yes, but of course I would have had to. In fact, I even had to borrow $2 from her mother because I forgot to take her money with me to get the marriage license. She was happy to give me the $2.
That's a good story. Well, okay, then in May of 1944, you come along and you enlist or you're drafted, or?
Well, go back a little before then.
Okay.
When I graduated, I was 16 open my senior year of high school. Years ago, I don't think they do that anymore, and I think they're probably wise, but I started when I was 5 years old at school, and then I had a double promotion, or I skipped half a grade. So I didn't turn 17 until I made it 24th, and of course school was out, I think, about that time. And so what I wanted to do is immediately join the service. Well, my mom and dad, they wouldn't sign for me, so we finally come to an agreement if I would go somewhere to work, where at that time most of the people were going to defense plants, work for 6 months or so, then they would talk to me about signing my papers. So I knew some people in Columbus, and I went to work up at Curtis Wright, which made the Helldivers. And,
where was that located? Columbus?
Columbus, And I worked up there, and after I'd been there a couple of months, I decided to join the V5. The V5 was a naval aviation program, a naval aviation cadet. So I signed up for it. I thought, I'll go ahead and take it anyway, because it's getting close. Maybe I'll talk to my mom and dad and sign my papers. Well, I passed the test. And at that time, I think maybe there was 100 of us took it, maybe 10 of us passed it. So then I was scheduled for a flight physical over in Detroit. And so I went over, and the odds were about the same, maybe even greater. And I passed it again.
And you're 17.
I'm 17, so I was all gung-ho, because that was what I always wanted to do, was fly. So anyway, I talked to the people that gave me the test, and they said, Don, he said, we have to take the ones that a lot of them are closer to 18 than you are. We have to take them, because if they didn't get them time they were 18, then of course the draft got them. And said, when your time comes, believe me, we'll call you. So this went on, and I called them 2 or 3 times. Every couple of months I'd give them a Lansing and call them, because I don't know why, but everybody had a horror of being drafted. Everybody wanted to sign up, and most of the people, for some reason, inland, in the Midwest, chose the Navy, of all things. They had no idea. Most of us hadn't even seen the ocean. So that was about March or April. I called again and said, Don, you're right. You will be calling us any time right now. Why in May? It was getting close. It was around the 1st of May. I thought, hey, I'm going to get drafted. So I went down and talked to a recruiting officer in Portsmouth and signed up for the regular Navy. The day I was sworn in, I came home. I had my orders and everything to report to Pensacola, Florida. So I took it down and showed him my recruiting officer. Of course, by that time he said, oh, it's too late now. You're already in. It's too late now. Well, if I know what I know now or later on, I just went ahead and go to Florida and let them track me down.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure you
nevertheless,
could have gotten
that's
away.
why I went in the Navy. And of course, at the time I went in service, everybody in the company I was in at Great Lakes ended up in the amphibious group.
That's where you went to do your basic at
That's where Great Lakes, where we did our boot training, or our basic training.
Where was that located?
That's right out of Chicago.
Right out of Chicago. Okay.
And of course, when we got out of boot camp, we had I got a 7-day leave, and then we were sent to amphibious training, which was down in Virginia. It was, I don't think it's around anymore. The name of the place we went to was close to Little Creek, and it was Camp Bradford. And all it was a lot of sand and tents. And I mean, it was more or less like a Marine boot camp we were in.
What did you do there?
Just everything. I mean, just most of it was discipline, but we had training like on for gas, where they'd give you a gas mask and let you go through this building that had gas in it, and then you had to put the gas mask on inside the building, this type of thing, and fire control, water control, just advanced training for shipboard and for combat. And it was where I had all kind of physical education. I had already all kind of we call it physical torture. And we fired the different guns we'd be firing and all that bit.
How long were you there?
We were there about, I got out of boot camp. We must have been there a couple months. And then we got our orders to go pick up our ship up in Boston, Massachusetts at the Hingham Shipyard. And we were up there we finally commissioned our ship, was October 15th, 44. But we got up there about 30 days ahead of time. And of course we thought we were in heaven. They had an old hotel that they'd made into quarters for the Navy. And coming from Camp Bradford, we thought we'd really had died and gone someplace else.
How did you get to Boston?
By train.
You went by train.
Yeah, everything. We all went by train.
Did you stop over in New York?
No. We did stop over in New York later on when we picked up the ship. But while we were there, of course, the Hingham Shipyard, they just had one keel laid after another. And so what we'd have to do is help load the other ships until ours was ready. So we had work parties every day. And then we had advanced training as far as I was a pointer on a 40 millimeter, and we had learned how to fire the aircraft guns over in Rhode Island. So we had a lot of that too. And then in the 15th of October, we commissioned our ship. And we went down to New York, and we took on a LCT, which is a landing craft tanks. And it was a smaller version of the LST. The LST was about 300 feet.
Now you got an LST.
And the LST is where I had my duty.
And that was in Boston.
That was in Boston.
Okay, what was the name of the shipyard again?
Hingham, Hingham. Now since then they've closed it.
Okay.
Hingham Shipyard's closed.
Okay. And you got an LST. That's a much bigger ship than the
CT.
CT.
Yeah, an LST was at that time was the largest amphibious ship there was. It was 300 feet and about 50 foot wide.
Is that the ship that you did your entire naval service on?
Right.
Okay, what was the name of the ship?
Well, we called it, of course it was LST 947, but we called it the Lucky 7.
Lucky 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
And later on you probably read that we were pretty lucky.
Yes, you were.
We were pretty lucky. But then we went down to pick up an LCT in New York, and it was in 3 sections. They put it on the deck, and they put it up on all kind of skids or big timbers, and then fastened down so it wouldn't get away from us. And then from there we went to Chesapeake Bay. We had a shakedown cruise, which is to make sure everything was working properly. And
was everything working well?
Well, not really. Of course, you have to. That's normal. But you finally got everything so it was okay. So Then from there we went to, we were in Norfolk just a short time, and then we started to get overseas. We went to Guantanamo Bay down in Cuba and picked up supplies and ammunition, and then we went on around. We were in a convoy and then went through the Panama Canal and then up the west coast, up the Mexican coast, and Central American coast, and we were supposed to go to San Diego, but there were so many ships in there that wasn't room, so they took us on up to San Pedro, which is right out of Los Angeles.
While you're doing this, Boston, New York, Chesapeake Bay, Guantanamo Bay, I guess the way to put it is, were you having a good time? I mean, here you're a Midwest boy, and here you're out in the middle of the ocean. What are you thinking about?
Well, yeah, of course, you know, that was, when I was in high school, we used to have one of the Senate boys who lived next to, at that time, Saudaville was wet. I don't know if you ever knew Saudaville was wet.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, well, they had a bar that was better out about every corner. But the Senates, and now on Guy Street, we went to school with them. They lived right next door to the Al Cafe, so we used to go in and have him go in and get us a pitcher of beer, and of course we'd all share in the pitcher of beer. So, but really, the first time I'd ever really been away from home, and like I say, the first time I'd ever seen the ocean. And we went in some great place. We loved Boston because they were so friendly to us. Virginia, we had a problem with Norfolk. I don't know of any Navy man that was ever there that didn't hate the place, because I guess there was so much Navy that the people really strongly disliked the Navy too. And they would, you would go down the street, now everything that we were allowed in, and I mean, they had bars on the window just like jail, you know, because the sailors, they would go in there, and then they, with this feeling, that just made things worse because they'd get too much to drink and they just tear it apart. So it was quite an experience getting away from Norfolk. And then we went in Guantanamo Bay, and I remember I had normally when we went someplace, like Guantanamo Bay, of course, it's still Navy, we normally got about as far as the beer hall, and that was it. Later on, there was beer halls and there were prostitution houses, and that's normally where they let us go into. And so then we went to Panama. I remember we were on the Cologne side, that's on the Atlantic side, and it was quite an experience because we went in a few of the nightclubs, and we saw quite a few shows that would probably been barred in the States at that time. So there was quite an experience there, and it was still, it's probably like it was back in the 1800s. It was every little place they had prostitution houses, and you couldn't walk down the street without the girl was trying to pull you in. I mean, it was just that way. So that was an experience because I hadn't been exposed to anything like that. Right out many of them, unless on the old regular.
You didn't know your wife at that time, did you?
No. And then we went on, of course, on the Pacific side. I think it was Balboa. I think it's still Balboa. And I'm not for sure we even got Liberty over there. But then we came on up to San Pedro, and of course we thought we were in heaven again. I mean, it was Boston all over again, then some, because they loved the service people over there. They were really, really, really nice.
Did you get some leave in San Pedro?
Oh yes, yeah, I got some Liberty. I didn't get leave. I got Liberty, which is overnight Liberty. And I remember somehow I got into the stage door canteen, which you've probably heard about and read about.
No.
Stage door canteen, it was famous, and they had movies about it and everything else. That's where all the movie stars went down to entertain the sailors.
The stage door canteen.
Stage door canteen.
Okay. I'll look for that.
And I went in that, and of course one of the movie stars was there the night I was there was John Garfield.
Oh yeah.
And he was there, and so So it was, that was good. That was like right a week before Christmas. And I remember that we had, and I think I ended up too at the Palladium, which was a big nightclub there.
Mm-hmm.
But we had, I probably had 10 different invitations to share Christmas Eve,
Mm-hmm.
Christmas dinner with different families. They just come up on the street and want you to come.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we left Christmas Eve.
I see.
So we were really down. We were really down. Why they couldn't wait an extra day, but I suppose they had their orders.
So you're headed now for Pearl Harbor?
Now we're headed for Pearl Harbor.
Okay.
And it was pretty uneventful. Of course, you know, you're all the time looking for torpedoes. You standing watch when you're not working. And when we first went out, we kind of got scared because the porpoises would play games with you. And they would just run right alongside the ship. And once in a while, one would come right at the ship, and it looked like a torpedo. So that we finally saw the difference between that and the torpedoes.
Okay.
And then about the only eventful thing we had, like 2 or 3 days out, we had a Red Cross ship stop and give us some Christmas packages.
Oh, okay. Give us some donuts and Christmas.
Yeah, no, I forgot what it was. It wasn't too bad, you know, it was pretty nice. And then we went to, it took us about 2 weeks because our average speed is like 7 or 8 miles an hour.
Mm.
And flank speed, the fastest goes by about 10 miles an hour. So, you know, it takes a while to get some. And it had a flat bottom. And of course, you didn't ride through the waves, you bounced across the waves.
Mm-hmm.
So when we went to Pearl Harbor, and they had these huge cranes, and I thought it was interesting, we tied up along the Oklahoma.
Did you?
And at that time, they were using for a dry dock.
Is that right?
Used for
It was
dry dock.
upside down.
Well, however it was, I mean, we saw the pipes and everything else sticking up, but that's where we tied.
Okay.
That was where we tied.
So there was still some destruction there from the...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And of course, not long before we were there, they had 7 or 8 LSTs tied up, and they were taking on ammunition. Now, they never did know what a sabotage was, but it blew up everything around there.
Oh,
I forget how many people were killed on those LSTs.
hmm.
But we went to where these huge cranes were, and they picked up the 3 pieces of the LCT and set them up right, and then bolted everything together.
Mm-hmm.
Welded it together, and had it mounted on top of our ship. So we got to open all. We could take all the water out of the tanks on one side, flood them on one side, and get a real good list, and then cut the chains and let it slide right off our top deck.
Oh, okay.
That's how we launched it. And we had it all ready for that. And then we started. We were there, and I understand we were slated for the invasion of Iwo Jima. But somehow or other, they don't talk about too much, but our captain was quite a character, and he liked his booze. He was an old chief quartermaster. When the war started, they made him an ensign and put him in charge of the LST. Made him a captain. Well, some of the officers he had outranked him, so then they gave him enough rank so that he would be over all the different officers on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And he liked his booze pretty well. And of course, an old regular Navy man, old Mustang, they call them Mustangs, that came up through the ranks. Most of them were pretty heavy on the drinking. Well, he got drunk, he'd get drunk and shoot. One night he shot holes in radar mast, with his 45. But anyway, we ran aground. Somehow we ran aground to Pearl Harbor. So we were there an extra 30 days. We missed Iwo Jima.
Oh, because your captain was drunk?
Well, I never came out that way. That's pretty much what happened. And then, no, I don't think he wasn't drunk when he ran aground, no.
Okay.
No. But anyway, we came out and we started for the Solomon Islands. And we started out, and it was about a 2 to 3 week trip. And we crossed the equator, and at that time, you were pretty well paid for it. If you hadn't been across the equator, you were called a pollywog.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones who hadn't been across the equator were called shellbacks. Well, the day before you crossed, the pollywogs got their flag out and flew it, and then of course the shellbacks would try to take it back. Well, it so happened that there were most of the crew was pollywogs. Maybe there was 9/10 of them were pollywogs. So we really gave, including the captain, all the ship, all the officers, and all the people who had been in and over the equator a hard time. Myself and another fellow, I remember, clipped off the mustache of this bosun mate, and he was really proud because he put wax on that thing would stick out that far, and he'd been cultivating it for years. So we took Tim snips and cut it off. So, and we did a few other things, so they were really waiting on us. And one of the things they did to us, they made us strip off their shorts, and then they had King Neptune, who was this big, huge, heavy naval officer. His name was Bill Platt, who Bill, by the way, has died. And had this great, big, fat belly, and they had grease all over it, and they made it, and he had it with a baby's cap on and a diaper. And we had, he wasn't King Neptune. Another guy was King Neptune. But we had to kneel down, and they had water all over the tank deck, which was on the bottom deck. He was seated up there, and we had to kiss his belly. When we kneeled down, there were people behind us with electric welders. And of course, they had to pull these cutaway back. But they would hit it. We were soaking wet. They'd hit us with that, and we would go straight up in the air. And we had to kneel back down until we didn't do that, until we didn't move. And then they had the royal doctor and the royal barber, and of course, they had the royal painter. First, the royal barber, they took 10 steps to cut her hair with it. And then the royal painter, he painted from her head right on down. I know you're familiar with chromite, red chromite, it's a type paint, and the green chromite they used to put on rust to keep rust off before they put paint on. And they had us painted all the way down to our toes, half green, half red. And then we had to go to the royal doctor, and they shot us full of, I don't know what all kind of crap they had, and made us drink it. And then we went through, and of course what they did, as the pollywogs were initiated into a shellback, once they got through, then they would be shellbacks, and they would load up on us. Everyone had a big board in their hand, big paddle, and we had to crawl through these big brown ventilation vents, and they just about beat us to death. And of course, they waited until the last two for me and this other fella who had acted up the day before, and they did everything. I wasn't for sure we were going to come out of it. And then once we got through, we on the tank deck, that's inside the ship. Then they took these water hoses that if you hit somebody, just like the fire hose, it didn't knock you down, it had that much pressure. And they lined us up against the side of the ship and turned those hoses on us. And so by the time we got through with that, we knew we'd been initiated.
How long did that ceremony last?
All day.
All day.
All day. All day. And then we had one other time, and now there's only one time that we had a chance to get a shellback, and this one guy was a replacement on the ship, and we crossed one time, then coming back up, and we actually put him overside. We tied a line around him and put him over the side of the ship, and it's what we didn't drown him. And we brought him back in. I know he really got a rough time. But
well, after this ceremony, then you are shellback.
Oh yeah, I'm a shellback.
Okay.
Yeah. But we had after we crossed the equator, then we weren't too far. In fact, we lacked like 4 degrees of hitting the longitude, or anyway, if we'd been 4 degrees over, we'd have been what they call a golden shellback, which is equator and 180 degree. I think it's longitude, if I'm not mistaken. Longitude. that, but we went on down to Solomon Islands, and we get down to Solomon's, and of course we did start doing training, more training.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell you're getting close to the war zone and all this? By the
Oh
time
yeah, you were in the war zone.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you were in the war zone. You left when you left New York and Boston. You were in the war zone.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because there were German subs every place and Japanese subs, and we were in a most of the time we traveled in convoy, and we had little sub chasers. I can't ever remember that they even wasted destroyer on us, but we had patrol PCs, had patrol cutters or patrol cruisers, and they could all carry a depth charge, and that's what that they found us sub or run into sub, of course they used that. But we really didn't have too much of a problem, and then like I say, we got down in the Solomons, and
Where did you go in the Solomons?
well, Guadalcanal.
Guadalcanal.
And Tulagi. Tulagi was where we did a lot of our training. We would get troops. We finally took on 700 or 800 Marines, and they were all veterans of Peleliu. We ever read much about Peleliu or not? And in any event, we one day I received a letter from this friend of mine named Eugene Green. I got a letter from him one day, and
After you were...
after in the Solomons.
Oh, I see.
And it was postmarked the day before. So I told my division officer that I knew exactly where he was, and he was an old friend of mine, and if I could have the afternoon off to go look him up. So he said, sure, go ahead. So I went, started up the island, and there must have been 100,000 Marines on that island.
What island was it?
Guadalcanal. And I'd asked somebody where this outfit was, and he said, it's right up the street, and I'm hiking going up the street, going up the road. Finally, after about 2 hours, I found him. It was real funny, I found him. In fact, he was in the Marines, and that was a big deal because the LST, it was fine when you were in port, but they ran out of food real quick, and when they do that, you were strictly on dehydrated eggs and dried potatoes, and God, it was horrible. That was when they first started doing that process. They're still bad, but they were really horrible back then. So I remember we had salmon and peas, which I thought, boy, I was in heaven getting salmon croquettes. And then Jim Sechrist, I don't know if you knew Jim or not.
Yes,
Jim was company clerk, but I never did get to see Jim. Jim and Greenie and we all graduated together.
Oh, okay.
So
They were in the same outfit,
yeah,
Hugh Green and Jim.
So I spent the day with him, and then I got back to the ship. When I got back, we were at general quarters, and we were beached. Front end was up on the shore, and so as soon as I got there, they said, "Get back on your gun, Sherman." Said, and there was a two-man sub that they'd run into out there that was trying to cause some problems. So we left.
Did you see it?
Never did see it. I think they finally sunk it, but we never did see it. And then we did training exercises off of Tulagi. And one Sunday, is this too long?
No.
You can take out what you want.
Right.
Anyway, one Sunday, it was not much going on anyway. And we were maybe a mile out from Tulagi. And we decided, 2 or 3 of us decided we'd swim in and see what the island looked like without telling anybody. So we did. We swam in, and of course there's every kind of a shark, barracuda, everything in the world in those waters down there. And in fact, we used to have, they have swimming parties, and they let us swim off of the bow of the ship. And they had a small boat. They would have sailors with carbines to try to scare away the sharks. But anyway, we swam in there, and we got in, and of course there wasn't much there. I remember these great big crabs, these land crabs they had there, and just jungle you wouldn't believe. So we started to cross. We thought, well, we'll go see what's on the other side of the island. So we started to cross, and we ran into these natives with their spears and their bows and arrows and everything else. And fortunately for us, they were friendlies, you know. And one of them could barely speak English, and we asked him. We were lost, and they told us there was a English seaplane base right on up from us there. So we went over there and finally got there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we talked to them, told some of the guys, you know, say, hey, you know, we got a problem. We don't know how to get back to the ship. So a couple of the guys volunteered. They had a small boat, kind of like a skiff, to take us out to the ship. So they took us around the island. And just we got there, our ship, we barely could see it. It had to change orders and it was headed out.
Oh.
Well, we about croaked. We thought, oh my, you know, that.
Were you
that
officially?
time, that was desertion.
You were officially AWOL or a deserter at that time?
Well, AWOL, I suppose. I don't know. I wouldn't declare you a deserter, but I'd say if they would have kept going, we had some serious problems.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that saved us, they did have a change of orders, and we could see the anchor ball. When they drop the anchor, there's a ball, big ball that they run up, show that they're on anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to change of orders, so they were about 2 miles out. We barely could see them. And there was 4 or 5 of us. We all couldn't get in this boat. So everybody got in except me, and I had to hang on the back. And man, I mean, I flapped like an old rag all the way out to the boat, to the ship. And I was red from here down. And we climbed up the stern anchor. Thought, well, you know, we knew they'd seen us coming. And we no sooner got on the deck, and I heard my name, Sherman, DR, report to the captain's cabin with the other guy. Anyway, it ended up, I got a captain's mask. And
what does that mean?
well, that's a court-martial, but that's the mildest one. You get into summary, and then you get into general. But this is normally a captain's mask restriction, and whatever punishment they give it to you, they give it to you on the ship. So our punishment was, in addition to our duties and our work and our regular watches, 4 hours a night we cleaned the bilges. We had to go from 12 to 4 in the morning. We had to go down in the bilges, which is the lowest part of the ship, and clean all the oil out. That was our job.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many. Then we were restricted to the ship. I don't know how long, but it wasn't any big deal because we weren't going any place, so we couldn't get off the ship anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember the duty as far as cleaning the bilges. And then we picked up, like I say, like 700 Marines, and that, like I say, they were veterans of Peleliu and Palau, some of those places over there, we taught. And fine bunch of people. They were some of the best we ever had on the ship. And the officers always impressed me because they didn't wear any rank, and they slept with men.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have special quarters because the officers tried to give them special quarters, but they wouldn't have any. They said, no, these are our people, this is where we're going to stay. Well, everybody knew who the officers were. Men all knew who the officers were.
Mm-hmm.
That they really, really were. And then from there, we finally left to Solomon's and headed for this staging area, which was for the invasion of Okinawa, which we were finally told that we were going to make an invasion of Okinawa, and we had no idea where it was. We never heard of it. I don't think anybody in the States ever heard of Okinawa at that time. And then we finally found out, well, the staging area for that, there were like 1,400 ships, all went together up to a little place in the Caroline Islands called Ulithi, U-L-I-T-H-I. And that's where we all met together, and then from them we formed a convoy to make the invasion of Japan, or not invasion of Japan, but Okinawa.
Okay.
From there we went on up to Okinawa, and we got there like the night before. And of course some of the big battleships, they sat right out and fired their 16-inch guns right over top of us. And they would go over there, they would shake the whole ship. I don't know if nobody ever read weight. One 16-inch shell was 2,000 pounds.
Gosh.
So when they'd fire like 16 of those things, 8 or 10 of those things.
Every one weighs a ton.
Oh yeah, you just shake it. I mean, you were underneath it. We were right underneath them. And of course they fired those all night. And then the next day, we were in single file to go in to drop off our troops. And all, of course we had. We carried on this ship itself, on the cargo, we had like a 3-foot false deck. Under the false deck was nothing but ammunition. Then we loaded on with Amtracs, which an Amtrac was an amphibious track, an amphibious tank. And they didn't have the armament or anything else that the big tanks had, but they could carry troops in. They could take troops in. And then after that, of course, we had also underneath the LCT, we had ammunition, we had supplies. The Marines, they stayed any place they could on the ship. And then we had high octane gasoline all around the inside of the ship. So with a 1/4-inch armament, one shell, and we've seen them, they blow up all night. You were gone.
You've seen them blow up?
Huh?
You've seen them blow up?
Yes. And then the first or second day, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. When we were going in single file.
To Okinawa?
To Okinawa.
The beach?
And they told us that everything to fire at anything in the air, said the Japanese have been known to capture our planes and have our insignia on and fly over. So we were to fire at everything. Well, we no sooner got started in than this float plane flew over us. I may have said something in my book. And of course we had orders to fire on it. And between all of us, we shot it down. Whether we hit it or not, but anyway, we shot the plane down, our own plane, going in. But we didn't have any choice. I mean, that was it. And then we started in to beach, and then the ship before us went in the beach. It got hit by mortar shells or suicide plane or something, but it blew up continually all night. So then they decided to anchor out and use the Amtracs to get our troops in. So that's how we got our troops ashore and all our supplies ashore. We actually never did hit the beach at Okinawa.
You didn't?
No,
You
it
stayed
was all
off.
taken in by Amtracs and boats and so forth.
But there was a lot of fighting that was going on.
Well, there wasn't too much fighting immediately for the troops. Now, we caught it because, I'll get into that in a minute, but the troops, they had very light opposition because the Japanese had pulled back and were waiting on them. Well, the place we landed our troops was Point Bolo, and it was one of the most narrow parts of the island. And our Marines were supposed to, along with other Marines I assume, were supposed to cut across the island, cut it in two, and the Army was supposed to be on the other side and meet them. Well, for some reason, the Army never got there, so our troops, when they went across the island, the Japanese just fell back and blew up the bridges, and then when they got across, they had to fight their way back. Well, they had, I don't know, 70 or 80% casualties, and we had to go in and get them. And so
What do you mean go and get them?
To bring them back out on the ship.
The bodies? I mean,
Well, not the
or
bodies, but wounded and the
survivors.
ones that weren't wounded. And I got tickled because I got acquainted with some of them, and they always complained about being on that LST. And of course, we were busy. You know, if a plane came in, we were all firing at us, so we were pretty busy. But when they come in and strafe, or even come in at us, these poor guys had nothing to do to watch it and run from one side of the ship to the other. And so I asked him, I said, look, you had to do all over again. Would you rather go on the shore or would you rather stay on the LST? He said, even knowing what happened, I'd rather be on shore. He said, I can dig a hole. I can't dig a hole out here.
Yeah. Okay.
So then we were there, and like I say, I don't remember everything that happened. I know we were under fire almost daily. I know we were at our guns for 4 or 5 days, and the only time we were off of guns was to go to the head or the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
And the cooks, they would bring sandwiches up to us. But they had, there was one day they had like 300 suicide planes came over.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we had different rings. We had the outer ring, which was normally your destroyers, and of course probably some more defensive ships. And then they had another ring. Carriers might have been out there too. I know they were way out there. And the Bible ships and all them. But then the cargo ships, they were all inside, and they were trying to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had guns, but we were pretty much sitting ducks. And the only protection we had is they had generators that made smoke. And of course what it was burning diesel is what it was, but somehow you mixed that with water and it made smoke. Well, it continually caught fire, so our job was to make smoke for a lot of the other ships, but every other ship would be covered with the smoke except us. We'd be out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
But in any event, we had, I don't know how many planes, like I say, we had near misses.
These are kamikaze planes that just about hit you. Did you have any hits?
We had, well, first of all, we had, they were hitting all around us. And then the time that probably our closest call was one day there was a Val dive bomber, and the Val dive bomber was, even had fixed landing gears.
Hmm.
But this pilot was just flying alongside of us, and of course we had orders we don't fire on him. Of course the other ships did too. Well, I don't know, somebody hit him or what, but anyway, he decided we looked like we were pretty easy, so he did a wing over and came right into us from the bow and followed our right alongside the ship. Now I was on the last gun. I was on the stern gun, or gun 6, which was the furthest one on the stern of the ship. And like I say, I was a pointer. It was my duty to fire the gun. So the plane, just as it got to us, did a wing over and came right into us. And luckily for us, he evidently didn't have a bomb on him, or at least it didn't go off. The wing hit our gun tub, which I'm talking about from here to the telephone from me.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty close.
Spun around and lit right down below our ship.
Probably less than 10 feet, maybe 10 feet away.
10 to 15 foot, yeah.
Yeah.
I can show you pictures really where it hit.
Mm-hmm.
And
you get a piece of the plane?
got a piece of the plane, and I know we all were pretty well shook up after that. At the time, it was real eerie, and I've talked to other people, and I guess this experience is not uncommon. This all happened in a matter of seconds, but my whole life placed in front of me.
Is that for true? Is that real?
Believe me, it was true. And it was like I was in. It was all happening in slow motion. I mean, everything. 18 years. I was 18 years old. Everything from my childhood forward came flashing right back in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I could see the Japanese pilot. I could see him yet because he was, looking at me. And I was looking at him. And finally, like I say, the plane hit. And
are you firing at him at the time?
oh yes, oh yeah, we fired at him all the time.
What kind of gun did you have?
I was on a twin 40. It's called a Mac. You probably see Mac
They go like
guns.
this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
looks like you would have blew him out of the air.
well, I assume we hit him. Somebody hit him.
Mm-hmm.
I assume we might have hit him, but No, that was good. A lot of times they go right through the ships, or right through the planes.
Fabric, I guess.
Yeah, they spun around and lit down there, and we had below us was a 20 millimeter, and these are they're like a heavy machine gun, and they fire a bullet, pretty good sized bullet, shell, and they strap them in. You've probably seen them on the different pictures of them. And this guy, we had mops, we call them swabs, on a rack all along the stern of the ship there. And this pilot and the plane went right down below. Well, he took his gun and shot right into the plane and the pilot and cut off every rack there was back here. There was wood splinters flying
out. Is that right?
Yeah. So we had several close calls, and then we had
that was the closest.
That was the closest. Yeah, that was the closest. And we had then our anchor chain broke.
From that experience?
No, from another. I mean, later on, we were supposed to load part of our load. We were supposed to take over to Ieshima. And Ieshima probably doesn't mean much to you, but if you ever read much about Ernie Pyle, that's where Ernie Pyle got killed by a snake. But before we could unload over there, we got our anchor chain broke. And of course we had a load of supplies on another ship, and they took it over. But it was quite an experience because we were running into everything, and we hit this one, it was an LCI, and the LCI is a smaller landing craft, but it's strictly for infantry, landing craft infantry. And we hit it, it was dark, and of course these guys thought they'd been hit by suicide. I didn't know what happened. They all come, it was kind of funny in a way, because they come all barreling up from down below, and they were all, half of them had their clothes on, half of them didn't, going over the side like a bunch of frogs. And then talking to a friend of mine, we were talking, he was in Okinawa too, his name was Don Walker, and we were talking about one night, about Okinawa, and he's telling me about this crazy LST one night broke an anchor chain and hit them and almost sunk them. I said, you're not going to believe this, and I brought out my little diary and showed it to him. He about croaked. Exactly. So he evidently, I don't know, maybe it was somebody else hit him too, maybe, but it sure sounded like our ship was the one that
did he dive overboard?
Yeah, he said he went over the side. Well, then we got out, and we had several near misses. And of course, we couldn't have any lights on out there. And we finally, boy, all at once, it lit up like day, and they had these spots on us, like great big aircraft carriers there. And this guy, I don't know if he was Andrew or who he was, he got on a loudspeaker and call us, say, you sons of bitches, you come one foot closer, we're going to blow you out of the water. So we got way away from him. And I have no doubt they'd have probably blown us out of the water if we'd, because they weren't dispensable, we were.
Yeah.
Well, we were there probably for another, when we broke our anchor, then we had to head out of there. So we were up there maybe 10 days altogether, and then we headed for Guam for repairs. And Guam had so many ships in there that had been hit. The Navy suffered more casualties up there than they did in any in the whole World War II.
At Okinawa.
At Okinawa. And in fact, they suffered more casualties than the Army and Marines put together.
Did you have any casualties on your ship?
We didn't have a scratch. We had a gun captain who was on our gun and got scared and run out and fell and hit his head on a stanchion, and then tried to claim that he got hit by shrapnel and tried to get a Purple Heart. Well, this day nobody has a use for him. And it was Ransby. But we got on to Guam, and it was so filled up, so they sent us down to New Caledonia, which is a French possession. That's a good bit from Australia, but it's about the same latitude. Probably familiar with New Caledonia, down in Noumea. And how I remember the date, I was down there on my 19th birthday.
Oh, is that right?
24th of May in 1945.
Well, you're growing up pretty fast, aren't you?
Growing up pretty fast, yeah.
Now,
so we had a ball there. We had a good time.
Were there natives on the island?
Well, not really. There were an awful lot of, we had never seen this, but there was an awful lot of black and white marriages.
Mm-hmm. French.
French and the blacks and
Mm-hmm.
the natives and all that. And of course, we'd never seen anything like this. And we just,
Some of the southern boys upstairs.
oh yes, yeah. Of course, we went ashore, and I remember, you could see it from the ship. They had this, we called it the pink house, this great big, huge building. And they always had them for the sailors, and it was a prostitution house. So we went ashore, and of course, since I didn't have that in mind, I'd be lying, but when I saw the line, it was about 2 city blocks long, I said, no, forget it. So we went in and went to the closest bar.
That's good.
Closest bar.
Well, there were French women there too?
Oh yeah, it's French possession.
Okay.
Yeah, it was French.
After that, did you go to China?
No, after we left, we were there about 30 days, and then we picked up some 49th Ordnance who were part of the old 37th National Guard in Ohio.
Oh,
That went over for a year in 1940 and were supposed to be discharged a year.
Mm-hmm.
And they got stuck in New Guinea for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't, I don't think there was 50 or 100 miles changed hands all the time they were there.
Is there?
They fought, they would go so far, and talk about people who were, we call them Asiatic. I mean, people were crazy. I mean, these poor guys, they were crazy.
Talk about the 37th Infantry Division. Is that it?
Part of the Infantry was the 49th Ordnance.
Okay.
So then we took them up to, we left there and went to the Philippine Islands. And the big islands like Luzon and Leyte and Mindanao and all the big islands, of course, they'd already invaded. They were doing that while we were at Okinawa. So we were taking the troops, we were getting ready for the invasion of Japan. And we were taking these troops and new troops just coming over from the States, and then the islands they bypassed, we called it a turkey shoot. We'd land them on those islands, and they would, what Japs they had left, they would just wipe them out.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd go from island to island. So then we were in Subic Bay when they dropped the bomb. We even knew pretty much when we were making the invasion of Japan. It was like in November of 45 or 45, yeah. And they dropped the bomb, and of course we had no idea what they'd done.
Mm-hmm.
We were happy because we knew that we weren't coming back if we made the invasion of Japan.
Did you go to Japan in occupation?
After the war was over, and we were some of the first troops that took in, or first ships that took in occupation forces.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we were attached to Douglas MacArthur, of all people.
Did you ever see him?
No. But I saw his headquarters, the Daiichi building in Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went up to, we took the first troops in, and I can remember we went in right in Tokyo Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we didn't know what was going to happen. We all were manning our guns. We were all at general quarters. And of course the people, the emperor told them to quit fighting. He was all powerful yet.
How did they treat you?
They treat us good. Really, I have to say that. They treat us good. But MacArthur laid down a lot of ground rules. I can remember one that no fraternization. Couldn't eat in any restaurants, no way. And just like on, if a Japanese vehicle, Japanese, tried to pass you, you had orders to fire on it.
Mm-hmm.
He knew the Asiatics, and he was putting them in their place. And of course, consequently, they thought he was the greatest thing they ever walked.
Mm-hmm.
But he came out with the white helmets, I think it was 11th Airborne, if I'm not mistaken, and they had the white scars and white gloves and all that. He really put on a show.
Mm-hmm.
And his building was the Daiichi building in Tokyo, which was right across the moat from the Emperor's Palace. And of course, the Emperor's Palace was never touched, and as far as the bombing. And of course, that this Daiichi building, evidently they thought, well, that's where we'll use for our quarters, so we don't want to bomb it either.
Did you, you were in Tokyo?
We first went in Yokohama, Tokyo Bay, and there was a place called Yokosuka, which is a big Japanese naval base that eventually, that was our home base. But our first place we went into was Sendai, which was north of Yokohama. And it didn't seem like it was a very big town. I understand it's a pretty good size now. But when we walked down, when we first went on Liberty, of course there wasn't anything we could do really. I mean, just go and look. And we would go down, and I can remember the mother grabbing their children and running in the house with them. But I guess the Japanese had told them that we eat their kids, and just ridiculous things. And of course, by the time we'd been there for a few months, they were taking us for everything they could take us for. We found out how easy we were. But then we went back, and we kept going back and forth from the Philippines to Japan. We were all over Japan. We were right outside of Tokyo, or not Tokyo, but Hiroshima. Of course, nobody ever told us that was. I don't think at the time they even knew how dangerous it was.
Did you go into Hiroshima?
We were right on the outskirts, yeah. But I knew we were exposed. Everybody.
You were able to see the city or what was left.
But and Hiroshima was bad, but Tokyo, Yokohama, all these places were firebombed, and Tokyo was leveled. I mean, it was, they talk about the atomic bomb, and it is horrible. But I'm not for sure it's any more horrible than firebombing, because there's probably more casualties in using incendiaries and firebombing with these firestorms here and over in Germany there ever was at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But it's something that I think considering the size and the great amount of power, I think it's what scares everything, and rightfully so. But I think we should be afraid of conventional bombing and some of these other things just as much.
Did you bring back any souvenirs from the war?
Well, of course, the rifle.
Got a rifle?
I've got a 25 caliber Japanese rifle.
Is that what this is?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me get that here.
These are comparatively rare. Most of the rifles that the Japanese infantry used were 31 caliber, just a little bit bigger than our 30 caliber in our old Springfields. But this is a copy. This is a copy of the Springfield, and
it does have that familiarity of the stock.
Yeah. Oh, it does. It does. And this is a Japanese carbine, and it was used by the cavalry, and that's why it's shorter than the other rifles.
What's the story?
This one of the soldiers in the Philippines had taken this off of the dead Jap inland. And I wanted it, so he traded me this. I made a deal with the baker for 10 pies. I traded this 10 pies for this rifle.
That's a 10 pie rifle.
That's a 10 pie rifle. But this and then there was all kind of rifles we could have picked up. But this one was, when I first got it, the kids played with it. I never really took care of it. It had a leather sling and the leather thing for your belt, and they've all disintegrated, rotted. But this probably
interesting. Yeah, this is the bayonet that came with it.
This is the bayonet.
Okay.
Yeah, you take that off.
The scabbard.
And of course, the Japanese rifle was made so you could take the whole thing apart and never use a tool. There we go. And this
looks like a ramrod.
That's the ramrod, right?
Why would you need a ramrod?
To clean it.
Well, to clean it, right.
To clean it.
Right.
But this all comes apart. This part right here, see here, you push in on this, you slide that band off. This all comes apart. This all comes apart here. And you can do it without using one tool. This is your
Temporary. That's right, you don't have to strip it.
Anyway, that whole
That is
thing
a-
would come apart, and of course the Japanese were noted for, you know, to be out any place. I mean, they could take it apart in 2 or 3 minutes, clean it or whatever they had to do.
Have you ever found a cartridge for it? Have you ever?
I
been
did
able to
look
find
for a while, but then I finally didn't even look anymore. There you go. It's not snapping off, it would, but I don't know.
Okay. Did you ever get a samurai sword?
You know, I could have gotten, and I should have, I didn't do it, I wish I had it. But,
I'm gonna figure that fits.
you know, at that time, yeah, I just put it right over the barrel. At that time, all we were interested really was getting back home. You know, we hadn't been home in over 2 years. Let's see here, I think that slides right on.
Slides on there.
And you got to put it over the gun barrel.
Okay.
See that? There you go. There you go. Locked in. But we could have picked up, and of course the samurai, some of them are pretty valuable.
Very, that's what I understand.
And when we were there, we could have probably picked up about anything we wanted for nothing almost.
Did you get any more souvenirs of any kind?
Oh, I've got some. I've got a. Hang on, just be right back.
All right.
Japanese artist drew that back
Hold that
what,
up there.
January of '45.
Hold that up
Yeah. And of course I sent that.
Well, when you were in Japan, you had that, that was drawn,
It was
painting by a Japanese.
Hey, just a Japanese artist.
Uh-huh.
You know, we made $60 a month.
Uh-huh.
And we got C pay or hazardous pay, and we got $18 more. So we had our money that we made was in the Navy was $78 a month.
Wow.
So we didn't really have a lot of excess money. And then I used to send $30 a month home to my mom and dad to put away for me.
Uh-huh.
And we would get, which we could have gotten in all kind of problems at the time because of black marketing. But we bought, at that time I didn't smoke, and of course I don't smoke now, but I didn't smoke. And we bought our cigarettes for 50 cents a carton, 5 cents a pack.
Wow.
But the catch was the cigarettes were so dry that you light one up and it'd almost burn your nose. It'd burn right up. So we started selling to Japanese and the natives, the Filipinos, and different people. And they would give us $10 a carton. Well, $10 back then, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we were allocated, I think it was a carton a month, if I remember right. Or maybe every 2 weeks, I don't know. But I just saved mine back, and of course we'd get $20 or $30, and we were king of Japan and king of the island, so we'd have a ball. But that's where we had our spending money.
But now, eventually you leave. Did you go anywhere else other than Japan? And then after?
No, we made several trips back to the Philippines and back to Japan. And
What were the Philippines like?
They were in bad. They were
Pretty bad shape.
for what we saw. Now we didn't get into Manila, but in Subic Bay and some of the islands we were at, people were so poor, and there's been some mystery about the Japanese. I can remember one instance, it's still hard to believe, but when the war was still on, if we might go out for 2 or 3 weeks or maybe a month at a time, and we couldn't dump our garbage because the Japanese subs would follow our trail. So we had to, now you can imagine almost being on the equator in the Philippines. This garbage would all be in containers, sealed containers on the stern of the ship in all that hot sun. And we would come back in, and of course these garbage gals would come out and meet us to take our garbage, which we'd dump in the garbage gal. These people would get between us and the garbage gal and beg for us to pour that slop on them. I mean, you just can't believe it.
That's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. They had no clothes, you know. I mean, they might wear a little strip or something. And we did have, of course, I'll never forget it. We had mattress covers we gave the Marines for the mattresses when we went in Okinawa. And they had like 800 of these. And of course, we threw them all to the side. With gas masks and everything else we had. Lord knows what all was in that ocean up there. And when we got to the Philippines, they were going for $10 a piece. And
A mattress cover?
They would make clothes out of them. They put holes for their arms and their head, and then make a dress out of it and make that. But they lived in their housing of their huts, and they were all up on stilts because the humidity and everything. And their flooring was bamboo strips about that wide in space, and bamboo strip. And of course, if they had to urinate or anything, it was right through the floor. And they had their pigs and their chickens and whatever, any livestock they had that lived underneath. But it was, no, they were poor. And then we were, it's hard to believe, but of course some places still had headhunters. And we were supposed to go to Iloilo on some kind of an exercise, and they stopped us. They sent a PT boat after us, and we went someplace else. But Iloilo was supposed to still have a headhunter or something. Of course, they were friendly to us at that time, but
they were our allies.
They were our allies, but it was kind of funny. They used to get the Army and Marines would pay them so much for every dead Jap they would bring, so they finally they would cut off their ears and bring them in. Which is, of course, well, I guess the Japanese, they did the same thing in America, and brought them in the Japanese. So
sure.
The Japanese,
it was quite an economical boon then.
So that was quite a deal for them then. They used to only have one ear. Well, they were double up on, so they finally got wide and made them bring in 2 ears.
Then when did you get back to the States then?
We had, when we were in service, you could either join the regular Navy, and that was normally for 4 or 6 years, or you could join the reserve, and that was for the duration 6 months. So the people who got let out first were the people who had children, were married, had the longest time in service. There were several criteria. So by being one of the youngest and single, I didn't get off the ship till about May of '46. Might have been April, I don't know. And they loaded us up on a transport and brought us back. And then our LST, I found out later on, was sent down to the Philippines. It was decommissioned there not too long after I got off of it, and it was turned over to the Philippine government. So then I understood the Philippine government either sold or traded to the Chinese, who at that time, that was before the communists had taken over. So whatever happened to our LST, it may be over on some river in China yet. I don't know.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out what did happen to it.
Have you ever gone back to any of these places?
No, I've always thought I might want to, but then I don't know. And I may yet one of these days.
How about Boston and places
I've
like
been to
that?
Boston, yeah. Oh, yeah. Anywhere in the States, yeah, we've been to.
Guantanamo?
Never been to Guantanamo. Of course, it's still a Navy base. You wouldn't, I suppose, like, by being in service.
San Pedro, have you been there?
San Pedro, I was out there along the beach not too many years ago.
Did you try and place some of the
I
spots?
couldn't remember where we were. It would have been on the naval base. But as far as Japan, Philippines, I don't know. Like I say, it might be interesting. Okinawa, I don't know whether it'd be interesting to go over there or not. I just don't know.
Okay. Did you like the Navy, Don?
Well, not really.
No. You wanted to join awful bad.
I wanted to join awful bad, and yes, during the war and everything, you know, it's of course you never know what you're getting into when you sign up like that. But maybe if I'd have had a different duty, but amphibious duty was pretty rugged. It was pretty rough.
Okay.
Now, the only good thing I liked about it was we didn't have much regulation, because I had several times that I got in up just ornery things that I would have probably got a summary court-martial for building a regular ship. So maybe I was fortunate I was on that LSC. But probably they probably thought, well, there's no use sending him ashore and putting him in a brig. The worst thing that could happen to him was stay on his ship. So, but we have reunions every 2 years. We started 40 years from 1944 when we commissioned the ship. 1984 was our first reunion.
1984 was your first reunion. And
we
you've had a reunion every 2 years?
Every 2 years since then. But we hadn't seen these guys, we hadn't seen shipmates in all these years. And they had the first one up in Cleveland Heights. And Faye went with me, and we went up there. And I got about halfway, and I thought, hey, I don't think I'm going to go. He said, why not? I said, well, you know, we lived with these guys for years, and I can still remember when they were 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. They were 25, we called them Pop. And I said, here, I'm going to get into a lot of people who are in their 70s and 80s and maybe even older. And I said, I just don't know whether I'm ready for that change or not. And anyway, we decided going up. And the first thing that happened, there was some little Italian guy named John Spaldo. He was a real character. And he was having it up to his house. And we were late getting there. Of course, there was 2 Shermans on the ship. There was one Sherman that was about 5'6". And they called him Little Sherman, called me Big Sherman. And when he saw me come in, he said, Big Sherman. And he ran up and jumped in my arms and kissed me. And I would never forget.
Oh, darn.
And so ever since then, of course, he died the last couple of years. But so many of them died off that we're having a hard time. We have, not this year, next year, we had a reunion last year, and we have them every 2 years, but I think we'll probably start having them every year because we're losing so many of the people.
What's the crew of how many on the
We had maybe 160, 170.
Did you?
Yeah, now that's a wartime crew. They had a lot less that in peacetime. But,
did you ever see anybody famous during your military? You saw John Garfield. That was a
John
movie star.
Garfield?
Yeah.
You know, they always had these shows, we always heard about them, but for some reason we were never invited.
Oh.
Your big line ships, they had shows like where your rank, where your high-ranking officers were, and your LSTs were, and I'm not feeling sorry for myself, they were kind of a forgotten group. We always said that the people that, especially the officers that couldn't make it on the line ships, they put them on LSTs. And we had an awful lot of people who were what we call 90-day wonders.
Really?
And I've got to know them since we've had the reunions, and they're great guys. But during the war, they, in my opinion, I went too high.
They weren't prepared then for it, were they?
Well, they didn't know what they were doing, and of course they were really rank conscious, and they gave us a pretty rough time, really.
When is your next reunion?
Next year.
And where will that be?
I think it's going to be down in Peoria, Illinois, or somewhere over in Illinois. But in the meantime, of course, that LST that I was telling you about came back, and it's down somewhere in Alabama, in Mobile Bay or somewhere.
Yeah, that's.
I think we may try to get together and go down there to see.
Oh, that'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
we're talking about an LST that some fellows went over to Greece and
Right. And
refitted and
my
everything.
special interest in it is the, my middle son's father-in-law was one of the crew members went over to get it.
Uh-huh. And this is recent, this was a couple months
Oh,
ago.
yeah,
right?
oh,
This
yeah.
is great.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be something if you could go down and see it.
Yeah, and I would have liked to have gone. I had a chance to go. I would like to have gone, but I have knee replacements, and I thought, I better not push too much because an awful lot of climbing and ladders and different things on the LST.
Don, is there anything else you'd like to say, or?
Well, the only thing, like, we came across on the troop ship, and here again, I kind of keep track of what dates are where by my birthdays.
You came back to the United States?
United States to San Francisco on a troop ship.
Okay.
And I can remember where we were. We crossed the international date line. That was what I was trying to think about, the international date line and the equator. If you cross the equator there, you're a golden shellback. We were 4 degrees from that when we first went across. But in any event, I crossed the international date line on my 19th birthday.
Oh, really?
So I've had 2 more. It was 19 one day and 19 next day.
That's one way to look at it. That's interesting.
No, 20th birthday. I'm sorry.
20th birthday. Okay. And you went to San Francisco?
San Francisco, and we're always kind of disappointed because they treat us great, but all the excitement about the war ending and everything by the time we got home was over.
Oh, yeah.
The guys that had a big time was ones that never went overseas. They're the ones that celebrated the war being over.
Well, after you got to San Francisco, this would be in 46 about, wouldn't it?
That was like May of 46.
Okay. How'd you get home then? Train?
By train.
Did you come straight home? Did you hang around?
Well, we were, when we came in Treasure Island, which is the line right out of San Francisco, it was naval base, they told us, said, we don't care what you guys do, but every morning there's going to be a list up here that if your name's on it and you're not here, then you got to go all the way to the back of the list. So you better be in there every morning and check that in order to get on the train. You start back to Chicago. So we every morning we go in to celebrate. We stay all night in San Francisco, and gosh, we had some lost weekends. Then we'd come back and check the list, see if our name was on it. And I'll never forget one morning I came back, and one of my shipmates, he was out colder than he was really out cold from too much booze, and I carried him all the way back on a streetcar or bus or something back to the base. And I still had him on my shoulder. I was looking up the list, and I heard somebody call my name. I looked around, it was Gordon Williams. I don't know you knew Gordon or not.
You know?
Gordon's from here, and he was a real close friend of mine.
Oh.
He was a year behind me in school. And he called my name. Well, I let the guy that was on my shoulder, he just fell off my shoulder and bang, hit the concrete and laid there. So we talked for a while, and he still hadn't moved. So we finally said, my name wasn't on there. He said, you want to go back on Liberty? I said, yeah, let's go. What are we going to do then? I said, well, let me look. So I found a empty room with the bunks in it, without a mattress. And I laid him out on the springs, and I can't even remember who he was.
I haven't seen him since.
I haven't seen him since. If I have, he's forgotten about it, and I did, because he probably never knew how he got back there.
Yeah. Now Gordon, was he in the Navy?
He was in the Navy, and
Okay.
he was coming, just so happened was coincidence, he came back same time I did.
Okay.
But he'd only been over, he didn't go in, he didn't go over till after the war was over.
How long were you in San Francisco then?
We were there probably about a week, and then we finally caught a troop train out, and we called them cattle cars. Well, so many of the troop trains had no air conditioning, no nothing. And this was like in May or June, and of all ways to go, we went down the southern route, which is through Death Valley. And we had the old steam engines and cylinders. Well, you open up the windows, and it was like opening up a furnace door. I'm not kidding. It was that hot. And then all the stuff would come in, no air conditioning, and it took us like a week to get to Chicago. By that time, everybody was about half sick.
Yeah.
I found a friend of mine from Portsmouth was one of the cooks, so I did eat pretty good. And then we got to Chicago, and of course they tried to talk us into signing over. And
Sign over, you mean re-enlisting?
Re-enlisting.
Uh-huh.
And he said, you know, nobody was doing that. Later on I did, that's another story, but later on I did sign up for the local reserve. I was called back into Korean War.
Were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, we got to Chicago and come on home, and I got home like in June of 46.
Mm-hmm.
And of course at that time there was no work for anybody, and they had, we called it the 5220 Club. And all you had to do is go down to the unemployment office and they give you $20 for 52 weeks.
Oh, right.
So I signed up for that, and then I signed up for college, and then I met Faye, and she led me astray.
Is that right?
Yeah. She led me
I
astray.
do that. How are you?
I'm okay, aren't
She
you?
led me astray. But anyway, I don't know how much of this you can use, or I've just been rambling.
That's all right, we've got a good story. Let me,
Well, one thing I did.
Now, your name is Faye, isn't it?
My, don't take my picture, please.
It's too late, Faye. And you happen to be married to this character over here.
For a while.
Okay. Well, I was interested, and I didn't know, in fact, but you went back in for Korea.
Right.
Okay. And how long were you there?
Well, I was only in about 6 months the second time, but I was put on a destroyer.
On a destroyer?
And we were attached to the 6th Fleet, and we went over to Europe.
Oh, I see.
Outside of being married, it was one too bad a deal, because we went to, of course, we first went out, we ran into a full-blown hurricane, and we rode it out for like 5-6 days. We went with Norfolk and got into it, and probably, I don't know if you're a High State fan, but if you ever heard of the Snow Bowl between 1950 between Michigan and High State.
No, I haven't.
The Snow Bowl, and it was one of the worst blizzards ever hit here. Well, it started as a hurricane over in off the coast. And we were headed, there were 6 of us, a flotilla of 6 destroyers, and we were headed for Gibraltar. And we got into this thing, couldn't turn back. We finally ended up like 200 miles off the Bahamas or something like that after about a week. But we were taking waves through over a radar mast, which was like 60 or 70 foot. And the only thing I ever heard about a destroyer is if it ever turned over, that the big 5-inch mounts were designed so they would drop off. Now whether or not that, but I wasn't for sure, we weren't going to find out. One of the ships next to us, they lost 3 men, but they couldn't do anything. They couldn't turn back or anything. And it took the hurricane, took everything off the ship, boats, the whole works, everything, one part of the superstructure.
Wow.
It sneaked off just like you take a knife to it. And then we went to Gibraltar. From Gibraltar, we were in a couple places in England, in Portsmouth and Weymouth. We were in Cherbourg, as I remember, in either Christmas or New Year's. And of course, at that time, they were still suffering from, 1950, 51, first part of 51.
The effects of the war were still pretty evident.
But then we went on to, I'm not tell you maybe an actual secret, but we ended up in Copenhagen, Denmark. And then at that time, Eisenhower was the commander of NATO. It was straight between Copenhagen and Oslo, which I don't know, maybe 100 miles or what. But we had ships, when he flew over to Oslo, we had a ship all the way across there, so that if his plane went down, he'd be inside of one of our ships.
Wow. You were one of those ships?
We were one of the ships, and then we ended up then going in the Mediterranean. And we were plane guards for the FDR, which at that time was a big super carrier. And our job was to pick up the pilots, and in time of war, our job was to intercept physically the torpedoes so when they hit the cruiser.
So you were on duty for about 6 months then?
Yeah, 6 or 8 months.
Okay. That's interesting.
And And then we were in Naples. We were in Cannes, Riviera in France. Of course, that was in wintertime, unfortunately. And we were in Crete, Sicily. I told you guys we were in Naples, Gibraltar, and we were always Mediterranean. And then part of the fleet, in fact, there was an Admiral Sherman then who was over the Sixth Fleet, or over the Sixth Fleet, I think it was. That's when they opened up Spain. Half of the group I was with, the Sixth Fleet, went to Naples. Half of it went and opened up Spain, and I was in the group of whatever in Naples.
That was probably not a bad deal.
Oh no, except it was completely destroyed. Naples was bad shape. Crete, Virginia, Poverty. Oh, we went to the Isle of Rhodes. I remember that, where the Greek mythology.
Rhodes?
Colossus
of Rhodes.
straddled the harbor, supposedly.
That's interesting.
That was interesting.
Well, you've had an interesting experience back in that time, didn't you? 40s and 50s.
Well,
Have you ever been back to Europe?
we went to. We've never even been back to Europe. We went to London a few years ago.
Did you?
And that was real interesting. That was real interesting. I didn't think it would be that great, but we had a lot of fun with that.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add now? We've been at it for over an hour.
There was one thing that I thought was interesting was on the troops that we took in for occupation Japan. Is no one at that time, I went in outside the Navy, that had been in actual combat were taken in as occupation troops.
Is there a reason for that?
Well, yes, I'd say so. You're basically a lot of the people, the Marines and the Army, had seen so much duty, they had hated the Japanese so bad, they didn't know what reaction they would have, what to do to the Japanese, they took them up front.
So you're saying that the troops that we took in to occupy Japan had not seen, they were raw.
They were
Raw, green. They had not seen combat. Okay. And you think the purpose behind that was that if they had taken combat hardened troops.
Question. Yeah, nobody's a question.
If they'd taken combat hardened troops, there would have been a.
And I still have I've got that a long time ago, but I'm still not too fond of the Japanese. I have gotten so I can tolerate them, but they're not my favorite race.
Have you had to deal with Japanese any?
Not really. And in fact, to this day, of course my kids have bought, I still, and I know that if I had any kind of product I could buy except Japanese, I wouldn't buy it. I still won't buy a Japanese car.
You don't? I better not tell you, my wife has a Mitsubishi.
Well, kids buy them. I don't have anything against anybody.
I think they made the bombers.
Yeah, that was the Mitsubishi, made the Zero, and they made a medium bomber called the, had a protrusion underneath it. We called it the Fat Ass Betty. It was the Betty medium bomber.
Don, thanks very much for everything you did.
Well, I hope I gave you something to
Oh, yeah, certainly. This will go on the library down there.
talk about.
Anytime anybody wants to see it, they'll know where to find you.
You'll know where to find me.
Sure enough. Well, that was interesting. I've had guys I've interviewed that were at Pearl Harbor. I don't know if you remember a fellow named Ralph Lee.
Ralph Lee.
He was at Pearl Harbor.
Well, that name rings a bell. Maybe I've read it that he about his.
He's been in the papers being at Pearl Harbor.
Was he on a ship? Was he on a ship or was he on a
Yes,
ship?
he was on a ship there.
You know that what's interesting is there were maybe 13 million maybe in service during World War II.
I think we had about 16 million
16
Americans.
million. See, less than 10% of them ever went overseas.
That's right.
And then take the ones who did go overseas and actually saw combat.
Much
you're
fewer
talking
still.
about a very comparatively few people.
That's right.
So it's, I suppose, you're
You're one of a kind, very exclusive club.
Yeah, and we actually we never did think anything about it. In fact, we never discussed it. I've thought a lot of people. The only thing I wanted when I got out of service is to be let alone, really.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we had things like the GI Bill, which was great. That we took advantage of. First house I ever bought was a $7,500 loan I got on the GI loan.
Is that right?
Yeah. And like I say, I went to business college when I was called back in, but I have no excuse not to have. I could have had enough school time to have got my doctorate if I would have pursued it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I did have the opportunity. But really, that's all I think most of us. Why you never heard too much? We were just glad to get out one piece.
When you went into insurance, who did you go in with?
When I first started, I was working in the shoe factory making.
The shoe factory would be Williams.
Williams, and I was making 60 cents an hour,
Mm-hmm.
and that was one of the big things they had down there. Where they had free dental service and all that. But you were lucky to, I've always said that Williams put me in the insurance business because I was having a family started, and I had to make extra money, so I started selling insurance. And Burr Murphin, whose daughter, by the way, just died,
Mm-hmm.
Judy Bauer.
Mm-hmm.
You knew Judy or not?
I know that name.
Yeah, Burr. And how I got in the insurance business, I was working in a grocery store and going to college. Up at Shavity's, Lou Shavity's dad's who I worked for.
Is that right? You were working at the grocery store at Lucia?
And I went down to Portsmouth to pick up, but at that time they had wholesale houses. You went down once or twice a week and filled up your truck and brought it back, and then resold in the grocery stores, wholesale houses. And I was going to Gilbert's or one of those. And they were building a highway between Sourville and New Boston, the 4-lane highway.
Mm-hmm.
And they were blasting. There was a big line ahead of us, and I was watching them blasting, and I had this truck here, this van of his, and the woman started up ahead of me and stopped real quick, and I wasn't paying attention, but I just rear-ended her. Well, it was an old 40 van. He kept it immaculate. And it took the grill and pushed it almost back to the radiator. It really did some damage to it. So I thought, well, I still driving. I might as well go down and get the groceries. So by the time I got back, old Frank was there, and he was a Frenchman.
Frank who?
Shavity, Lou's dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he was crying. He said, God damn it, honey, what's wrong with you? I said, Frank, I have no excuse. I wasn't paying attention. It was my fault. And you take it out and pay. And he said, hell, you couldn't work long enough for you to pay this off. So anyway, he had insurance with Burr Murphin. And Burr Murphin came up. And that's where Bill Swamber is now,
Mm-hmm.
the Murphin Agency. And Burr came up to the claim, and he sold me, I had a little 35 Chevrolet, and he sold me liability for it.
Mm-hmm.
So one day he came up, and he'd always come around and collect. One day Burr come up, and he said, Don, he called me Don, and he said, why don't you come to work for me? He said, why don't you work part-time? I said, well, I could sell insurance, Burr. He said, well, I think you could. So he's the one who talked me into it, and I sold my first policy in January 1950.
Mm-hmm.
And then I still worked, and then I left Frank's and went to Williams. And I worked there like 3 years. Well, after a couple of years, I was making more money selling insurance 2 or 3 hours a day than I could make it for the whole week.
Really? Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, I've got to, so against my dad's advice, against everybody's advice, I was making such a big mistake, leaving the opportunity of the shoe factory to go sell insurance. And it scared me to death, and I'll never forget in March of 1953, I took off full-time in insurance business. No guarantee, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And the first month of March 1953, I sold like 14 policies in one day. I sold 20 some one weekend. I'd work Saturday, Sundays, the whole works.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Anyway, I had no idea what I was going to get for my first check. And my first check in March of 1953 was for $2,000.
Is that right?
Now, 1953 would be worth what, 10, 15 maybe now?
A lot.
I mean, it was, I thought, boy, I've arrived. I have arrived. So I played the role next time, and so the next month I got a $600 check. I thought, well, I better, it's not going to be quite this easy. So from then on, and then I stayed with her in 1956. I'd heard that Burr was trying to sell the agency, and I thought, well, I better look out for myself. So I started my own agency. And then 6 months after that, Vern Rife and I formed a partnership.
Did you?
And he was a full-time city fireman for New Boston, and he had a part-time agency with Motors Mutual. So we combined, and then of course we were together a couple of years when he first ran for the legislature, and I was his campaign manager.
Really?
Even though I'm a Republican, I was Vern's first campaign manager in 1958 when he went in.
Mm-hmm.
And of course after that, he and I were together until 1972, and I went my way and he went his way.
Mm-hmm. Was your office in New Boston then?
Oh yeah,
Well,
we started.
They're on that little street, I forgot where it is, American
he
restaurant.
still has it, or his boy has it, Skip. But when we first started, I had an office in Sodaville, and he had the one in New Boston.
I see.
And of course that's before computers. And it was a nightmare keeping track of trying to get everything together and having the double overhead and all that. We finally decided to go down there.
Did
And then that's about the same time the highway took out our side of where our building and everything was on the south side of Guy Street.
what was the name of the movie theater that was on that side?
Stanley.
No, Stanley. My grandpa would take me down there.
Remember the old hamburger inn across the street?
Yeah.
There at Reese's.
Reese's, yeah. Now, when did you go in with the Cricker? How did the Cricker name come up?
I had a chance. I was involved with Don Connolly in Mobile Home Acceptance Corporation. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
What was it?
Mobile Homes Acceptance Corporation. It was a sales finance company. We got quite large. We had probably around 100 people working for us, and we were in like 8 or 10 different states in the southeast.
Wow.
And then we had a joint venture with Society Bank up in Cleveland. And the big thing that brought us down really, we never did go bankrupt, but we had to phase it out, was the money crunch back in, when the money dried up back in 83. Not 83, but 74 maybe, 75, and all the money dried up. I mean, there was just no, they had a real problem.
Nobody was making loans, is that what you mean?
Nobody's making loans, and then like Society Bank, we had like a $7.5 million line of credit waiting for us. We'd already used up a $5 million line of credit, and they had to cut us off with the line of credit, even though it had been agreed to furnish their other subsidiaries.
Furniture what?
To furnish money to their other
Right.
subsidiaries.
Okay.
So then after that, then the Cricker agency, I heard Bob Fraley had it, and Lynn Graham, and I heard it was up for sale, and we ended up buying it. But it was bad news. It was almost bankrupt.
Now that would have been Edmund, wouldn't it?
Edmund sold it to Fraley, and Fraley and Lynn Graham more or less run right into the ground.
Okay. You guys had to pull it up then, huh?
Yeah, we had to really pull it up.
That was a lot of
We had probably $200,000 or $300,000 worth of premium. Most of it was stuff that wouldn't stay with you. A lot of it was coal mines, which the big coal mine left us was about half the premium within the first year. And to show you the difference, we're probably $2.5 million or better right now in premium writings compared to $200,000 when we picked it up in '78. But we didn't have any way to go except up. We had to get it up.
I'd say you've done well though since then.
Yeah, we've done, been a lot of hard work. We've had some awful good people involved with us.
Did you own that building there on the corner of where where the 648 board now is?
Yeah,
Did
we
you,
still own it.
You still own that?
Yeah,
Okay.
we still own it.
Okay.
In fact, they're on their second 10 year.
Second lease.
Yeah, that's been really a big shot home to us.
That's stable. That's a stable outfit, isn't it?
Huh?
That's a stable outfit, isn't
Oh,
it?
yeah.
John's a good
And really,
administrator.
whatever they wanted, we've done too. We've completely redone that whole
They
deal.
shouldn't have any complaints then, should they?
Well, we try not to let them have any complaints. We've done anything and everything they wanted.
Well, I think we're done.